the biggest part is keeping it real between me and the Lord, because then it's going to spill over. It's going to become contagious. You cannot cook a good meal without the aromas wafting into your kitchen and your entire house. And so, but if you're intentional, like your goal when you're making cookies is not so that your bedroom is going to smell good, right? It's just because you're making cookies and it just so happens that the entire house smells like that. And so I think in our relationship with God, it's a bit like that. Your aroma is going to be very yummy to others. And so, work on your relationship with God, knowing, and by work, I don't like to use that word because he's the one who is doing the resilient work in you. You are, if I may, we are not the primary actor in our relationship with God. We are the receiver much more than we are the giver. He is the giver. He's the one who's making it possible, who's wooing us, who's growing us, which is why when we feel stale, it's almost, I wouldn't say good news, but there's hope there because that means he's challenging you into something deeper and he promises to deliver. The Holy Spirit's work is much more resilient in you than you think. And so is it with your children. And so I would say first, a role model. Just bake the cookies of your own spiritual kitchen and the kids are going to smell it and they're going to want it. And the second thing I would say is bathe them in the gospel, but challenging them to truly nourish themselves with it, not being content with your nourishment. You've heard it said a million times that God is not a grandparent. He's a parent. That means they have to develop their own relationship with him. And that's probably one of the scariest things for a parent because you want your kids to follow the Lord. But can I be honest? You actually have very little control over that. And it can be terrifying or it can be wonderfully freeing because if the Holy Spirit is wooing you to deeper intimacy, he's going to do that with them too. So I would say, at least in our case, I think I felt like the majority of my Christian witness to my children was actually happening outside of their awareness. I was praying a lot for them. So I think truly I would say prayer is what you can do most for your children, and praying years in advance, right? When my kids were in their cribs, I would pray for the stage of life they're entering now, which is college and potentially, marriage and all those things. And so you can pray way ahead because God listens to those prayers. So pray for them behind closed doors. They don't need to know. And then be authentic in your own relationship with him because kids can spot a fake a mile away. So I would say that's the greatest danger is your own staleness. But if you're on fire for Christ and you are truly listening to his guidance, he will direct you in how to raise your children, which is not to say it's going to be without problems. It is going to have hurdles and tensions. But at the end of the day, I think if your kids, when they're adults, they say, my parents loved me well, they loved Christ well, and they weren't perfect, but they were authentic and they were the real deal. The worst thing would be for them to say, well, they said one thing, but then they acted differently, either in public or behind closed doors. So as long as there is this authenticity, this, we talk a lot in theological terms of God's simplicity, in the sense that he is one. He's not divided. There's division by opposition to simplicity. God is not divided. He's united. He's one. And in the same way, if you are one, if you are simple as opposed to divided in your own self, if you're simple, if you're united, if you're in harmony in public and in private, in your own life, with your children, in your marriage, in all these areas, your kids are going to pick up on it.